Gasho, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda. Good morning. It seems like we're finally getting a resolution to this COVID crisis. Many people have gotten the vaccine, and that helps all of us. Unfortunately, there are many who really don't understand science or biology. And there's some leaders who also don't understand this, and it influences many others. What they don't understand is that every year, especially in winter, the flu season comes around and people get sick. They get sick with the flu. Millions of people do that. And every year we get vaccine. And yet many people still get the flu because there are many variants. Now, COVID is similar. It's a virus and people can contact it and get sick. The difference is COVID is very contagious and can kill. Over 580,000 people have died in just 1 year. It's very dangerous. And that's why we want to bring our attention to this. And that the vaccines that are being distributed are good. But like flu every year, vaccines are done annually. Now, this vaccine may have to be taken again next year. And the more people who are vaccinated, the smaller will be the segment of the population that can infect others. So let's be careful. Hopefully everyone will get the vaccine so that when fall and winter comes around again, there'll be fewer people who may be contagious. Now, even in San Diego, there was a large church here recently in the newspaper. Apparently there are about 5 locations, and they were a little laxed on gathering in large numbers, not wearing masks, not being socially distant. And 15 people have been infected, and that included some in the staff. And therefore, there could be a resurgence of COVID coming in the fall. And so we want to be careful. So here we are at the Buddhist Temple of San Diego. We're being very cautious. And so we are not having any on-site services until the conditions are better. In Buddhism, we're not led so much by belief, but by logic and wisdom. And so we're not scheduling any on-site services until the local conditions are improved. Now today, my talk will be emphasized, the emphasis will be on the Nembutsu. Nembutsu is a primary practice, and sometimes it's not emphasized by many because it is very deep and seems to be very difficult to understand. But the introduction to the Nembutsu can be easy and practical. And that's why I've used these methods of talking about me to we, that as individuals, we're actually part of a group. And actually we can switch from please, wanting the things that we don't have, to thank you, to realizing that there are many things that we do already have. And so these simple methods are just a way of introducing us to this deeper experience of the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, which really can affect our lives on a practical level and on a deep spiritual level. 2 weeks ago, in our Mother's Day talk, I spoke about Hig. This is the 3 poisons of hatred, ignorance, and greed, and that we might change it to hug, humility, understanding, and gratitude. So how do we do this? Today, I want to talk about the H part, the hatred change to humility. Now, Nembutsu, this H-U-G, humility, understanding, and gratitude, is like a hug, a spiritual hug. Now, a hug may not resolve the situation, but it does comfort us, and it does cushion any bad influence. Now, hug is an experience. It's not just a thought. It's an experience of compassion, that others really care for us, that there's kindness. And this is only just one experience of the Nembutsu. So this change from hatred to humility. As far as the 3 poisons, there's a lot of hatred that we can experience at this time. There's an anti-Asian sentiment. And the police department of Phoenix just sent out a notice warning people in California, Nevada, Oklahoma, and Arkansas that there is, I guess, some notice that there might be some violence or destruction centered around Wesak Day, which is the latter part of May, coming up this week. Now, as Shin Buddhists, we tend to celebrate the Buddha's birthday on April, his demise in February, Nirvana Day, and his enlightenment on Bodhi Day in December. But many other schools of Buddhism celebrate all three of these events in one day, which is called Vesak Day, usually the latter part of May, depending on the full moon. And so this is the warning that's going out, is that we should be careful, because I guess there have been notices of pending violence. Now, hatred is seen in other areas. Right now, due to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there's some anti-Jewish sentiment and violence occurring. We've seen the violence against the government, the insurrection and the attack at our capital. Of course, Black Lives Matter. So just the atmosphere that has been going on for, I'd say, the last 4 years, we have a sentiment of hatred. So how can we change this? How can we change hatred to humility? We know that hate cannot displace hate. And we hear that love can displace hate. But that's a big jump. And so what Buddhism is about is changing our mind from what we don't have to what we really do have. And again, going from hatred to love is a big leap, but perhaps we can do something that's kind of a middle ground, changing hatred to humility. And humility is something that we are familiar with. Namo Amida Butsu is that word which can help us change our mind. Now, the reason humility is important is that we see it in our services all the time. And we see that in the gesture of the bow. When we enter the sanctuary or hondo, the first thing we do is give a slight bow, yuhai. And when we leave, again, we turn toward the altar and give a slight bow. That bow is a sign of respect. When we burn incense, we go to the altar, bow, put some powdered incense into the burner, and we are experiencing the changing nature of all things, seeing something go from solid to smoke and ashes and fragrance. And again, humility is experienced as we chant. We chant not to be the best, the loudest, but when we chant, we find ourselves in harmony with everyone else. We want to be at the same pace, hopefully around the same tone, and saying the same words. And these are the words in the chant that has gone on for thousands of years from the time of the Buddha. So again, this is humility, being one among others. And our gassho, this is when we put the two hands together, showing the opposition of two things. And what we experience with this position is the wholeness, that when you have one side, you also have the opposing side. And so there is wholeness. And this is what this gassho reminds us of. And so humility can remind us that we are one with all others. And it puts us in a place of wholeness. It places us in a place where we accept others and others may accept us. Now, this happens in our services. So how can we bring our sense of humility into our daily life? One of the things I've been watching is the NBA basketball as we get into the playoffs. And being a Warriors fan, we just had a game between the LA Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. And the two superstars on that, LeBron James and Stephen Curry. Now, they're rivals. They may not hate each other, but they're strong rivals. But after the game, after LeBron James made that three-point score at the end of the game, team really, congratulated each other. I know they felt disappointed as Curry did. But again, there was a sign of humility that they honored and respected the opposition, because without an opposition, they wouldn't have a game. And so often you hear them interviewing the superstar. And what they usually say is that they don't take all the credit. They credit their teammates, knowing that they can only be a star if they're supported by their teammates. So again, it's this sign of humility, this sign of being included with all others. Now, sometimes we find this thing that we dislike because we don't know enough about a subject or another person. And this was true in this rivalry of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, two great players a few decades ago, who were rivals in college and then in the pros. Now, they didn't like each other until Magic Johnson's mother invited Larry Bird to dinner. And they hadn't really talked to each other until that time. And when they did get together after dinner, they talked and they found out that they had a lot in common. And yet, being rivals, they each made the other better. They were rivals, and yet there was no hate. They really became great friends. And they both improved greatly because they had this relationship with each other. They need the opposition. Now, in another area of humility, I don't like golf. I don't play very well. I used to caddy, and I used to wonder why all these men would come out on a weekend to enjoy themselves. And then after 18 holes, they would go home frustrated and angry because they had a lousy round of golf. In any event, we just had the Masters. And Hideki Matsuyama won the Masters, playing against over 200 of the greatest players in the world. And in this, is a great accomplishment. And one of the traditions at the Masters is that the winner can take the flag from the 18th green and take that home. So Matsuyama's caddy took the flag. And when he did that, he took it and then he bowed. He bowed to the course. And that impressed many people because Matsuyama, as being the best player in that tournament, had really beaten all the other players. He had beaten the course. He was the winner. And yet he bowed in humility, knowing that it was all these other things that he was part of, and that impressed many people throughout the world. So let's think about the things we may hate. Think about things that you may have hated as a child. Do you still have those hates? There are many things that we used to dislike and hate as a child that we've grown to like. And I have found that over the years, the older I get, there are fewer things that I can dislike. There are many more things that I can appreciate. And so as I give these talks, the actual value of them doesn't have much meaning unless they are practiced. And so what I'm encouraging us to do is to practice these acts of humility. Just by saying Namo Amida Butsu, we're reminded that there is another side, that we can change and shift from something we dislike and even hate and take it with humility. And so it's a shift. It's a shift in view from me, an egocentric view, to we, that I'm part of the whole. That it can change from please, this desire for things that I lack, to thank you, to realizing all the things that I have already received. So this Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, needs to be practiced daily on everyday practical things to help us shift our mind, from the negative to perhaps not great positive, but a sense of humility, that we are part of the whole. And that there is also this thought of how do we change the mind of others? I might be able to change in my mind going from hatred to humility, but how do we change the other side, the side that may hate me? Well, we'll take this up in our discussion, Buddhism 1, 2, 3 on Wednesday night. They take a little longer. And so this week, I encourage people to practice this shift. Just saying Namo Amida Butsu in any time that we feel displeasure. See if we can shift our mind, that we can change, that we can let go of things that I dislike, and just feel that our opinion on this is changing, and that we can shift our perspective. And that is the true value of this Nembutsu, to make our lives better, to see the same world, but seeing it from a different perspective. and it changes our lives from discontent to satisfaction. So before we close, I want to mention that tomorrow night, Monday, from 6 p.m. to 7, Reverend Ellen Crane of the Orange County Buddhist Temple will be giving I guess it's a webinar on creating your home Obutsudan or home altar. And you can go to Everyday Buddhist, which is online, and register for that for tomorrow night. And I would really recommend doing that. So it will enable you to see what it takes to make a home Obutsudan, or to make sure the one you do have is set up properly. And again, with that, you can do that as we do in the service, shifting our minds from hatred to humility. But more importantly, to do that every day in many instances, just with this simple act of reciting the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, again, to shift our mind. So please join me in that expression. Gassho, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida.